All right, we're here with Captain Jim VanWickler. He was the first in engine captain on a working residential structure fire off of Wildermuth and Clark. Jim, why don't you start off by telling us what your initial assignment was, or what location you were in, and what you did on this call.
So initially when the call came in, it was dispatched at an intersection of Wildermuth and River. And the PTI basically said that somebody was at the UPS distribution center and saw fire from a home. So we didn't have an exact address. So responding to the call, I was talking to my crew that we had a wind-driven fire, because at that time the winds were 20 or 30 miles an hour because a monsoon storm was coming in. And then the initial dispatch, the next due engine company was engine 276, so I knew we had some issues with, we were going to be there for a little while. So we made a turn onto River, and we saw a little bit of smoke. We made a turn onto Wildermuth, and it kind of opens up into a field across from support services, and we could see a residential house. Looked like it had several additions built onto it, and it had heavy fire to the west, which would be the backyard. The house faced to the east. I'd say probably 20 to 30 foot flames that were fed by the wind. We also noticed lines down to the rear of the house also. So initially we pulled up on the plug that we were going to take, and right then the address got updated to an Apache address. So that kind of threw us a little bit too. We were wondering if we were going to have access problems, if we needed to drive around the block to gain access. Initially we kind of discussed it briefly as a crew to maybe do a horizontal standpipe through the field. It looked like there was an alley kind of to the east of the house that we could go. So we initially took that hydrant that was off of Wildermuth, and as we crept forward trying to figure out our access, we could see that we could get down. It's kind of like a graded dirt road. So we made the turn down the dirt road. I gave my on-scene report from Wildermuth, and I had stated that I think I said something like we had a single-story residence, heavy fire to the rear, we were offensive, we were going to pull a horizontal standpipe, search and rescue fire attack. I went through the IRIC and accountability locations, things like that. I assumed command. We made the turn. As we crept closer and closer, I was thinking we were getting in a better and better position. I continued to assess the house. We stopped. The line got deployed. We wound up pulling the 2.5. I told my firefighter, hey, deploy the line to the back side of the house. My thought process in that was to take away the bulk of the fire first, similar to like what we do for a carport fire or something like that. He pulled the 2.5. I threw my pat, grabbed the tick and radio. I met him around the back side. He pulled the 1 3/4. I broke the line and assisted him with setting it up outside. We got water. I told him to initially start knocking down the fire to the rear. Like I said, we had lines down to the rear. We had a line that went north to south along the west backyard wall, and then we had a couple of like service drops to a house, and there was like a shed that they almost looked like they converted to a small apartment in the back that looked like there was a line down to that too. So I told him, don't go any farther in the backyard, knock down the amount of fire you can. I went around to the front of the house and met firefighter Preston there. He told me he had initially forced the door. He forced a screen door. We went to the front. I asked him to force that door. He did, and my initial assumption based on what I saw from the outside was we were going to force the door, we were going to have clear conditions, and we were probably going to have an attic fire, because it looked like it had started to extend by the time we got to the hydrant out on Wildermuth. We forced the door, and we had probably moderate smoke to probably the waist level. At that time, I ran around to the back, told my firefighter that had the nozzle, hey, let's go to the front door, we're going to initiate a search. He brought the line around. We made entry into the house. We got probably 8 to 10 feet inside, and had moderate heat, which kind of concerned me a little bit as well, because once again, I didn't think I'd feel any heat at all based on the fact that I thought the fire was in the attic. So we pulled a small inspection hole. Once again, I expected to see fire from gable end to gable end, and we had no fire. So we continued our search. We were basically kind of duck crawling because we could see pretty well low. I recognized pretty quick that it was a vacant house. There was very little furniture. I couldn't tell if they were starting to remodel or it had been remodeled, because there was a couple trash cans or something in there. When we got towards the back of the house, I noticed that the back Arcadia door was broken. So that answered a few questions for me as far as why the smoke production was where it was, and why we felt some heat, because that's where the majority of the fire was in the back of the house. As we got farther back towards the backyard where the bulk of the fire was, we pulled another inspection hole. Again, we didn't see any fire. We went into one of the additions, which was almost like a really small Arizona room, pulled another inspection hole. Initially, we didn't have any fire there. We continued on with our search. We got kind of towards the north part of the house. If I back up a little bit, when I was throwing my pack, the LA unit showed up on scene, and I had pass command to them. They had made the interior sector. So when we got towards the north side of the house doing the search, I could still kind of see out a window, and I saw that the fire was extending to a house to the north. At that time, command had engine 6 pulled up on scene. Command told engine 6, lay a supply line in, pull a line off of your truck and assist with interior. At that time, I called command and said, hey, it looks like the fire is extending to the north. We need to get a crew over there, and there's a line off of my truck that's available. The reason why I told them that last part was because where we laid the line down, it was basically down a dead-end alley, so I knew access was an issue, and I didn't know if where they were going to place their apparatus, if they could get to that house to the north. So it wound up, engine 6 wound up laying in, and then they did pull a line off of our truck because it was better access to the house to the north. So the whole time as we're doing our search and pulling inspection holes, I kept trying to reevaluate what was happening, because I didn't feel like the broken Arcadia door answered some questions for me, why I had the conditions that I had inside, but I still couldn't figure out why I wasn't seeing the volume of fire that I expected to see in the attic. So that was a concern for me. We continued our primary search. We got that relatively quickly. Then we focused back again on the southwest corner of the house where the bulk of the fire was on the outside. We pulled a couple more inspection holes. One of them, we pulled an inspection hole and had some fire, so we extinguished that out. And then it got to a point, it was almost a little frustrating where we couldn't find where the fire was in the attic. At one point, I told my crew, hey, just rip down this whole section of ceiling, because I felt like there might be a build over or an attic on top of an attic that we're missing. And we pulled that section in, and it turned out that there wasn't a build over in that particular issue that would cause us to not see a fire, a hidden space that could cause us to not see the fire. And that's pretty much the basis of what we did on the interior.
All right, good. So let's talk about now the things that you feel went well and the things that you would do different if you had the opportunity to do this again.
The things that went well, I think my initial size up I thought was pretty good. I had some time because we were kind of slow rolling across on Wildermuth, and I could see there was that big open field, and I could see the house for a while as we approached. And I knew we had a bunch of challenges as far as the lines down, the wind-driven fire, access issues, and things like that. I felt like my tactics went relatively well as far as the idea that I wanted to knock down the bulk of the fire to slow the spread, and then we were going to go in for search and rescue and fire attack. And I felt that I did a fairly good job of recognizing that it was extending to the north and getting a crew over there to protect the structure to the north. Some of the things that I felt like I could have done better, initially when we were out on Wildermuth, we had discussed pulling a horizontal standpipe through the field before we figured out that we had access through that dirt road. When I gave my on scene, I gave it from Wildermuth, and I said we were going to do a horizontal standpipe. When we pulled up pretty much right in front of the house, so I didn't need a horizontal standpipe. 200 feet inch 3/4 would have been plenty, but I had aggressive firefighters on the crew. As soon as the air brake hit, they were off the truck and doing their thing, so I can't blame them for that. So once again, voicing that we were going to do an inch 3/4 to at least my crew would have been better. Secondly, I never voiced that we were going to I don't know if I'd call it a transitional attack, but that we were going to knock down the bulk of the fire first and then go inside for search and rescue and fire attack. So if crews would have been stacking up, what I voiced on the radio wasn't exactly what they would have seen when they pulled up into the scene. I feel like I didn't as the scene progressed, I got more and more, my thought process was more and more trying to figure out why I'm not seeing the conditions that I'm seeing, and I wasn't necessarily listening to a lot of the assignments that command was making, specifically ones that can affect me as far as ventilation and things like that I could have easily put together whether we needed ventilation or not. I don't feel like I did command any favors by giving really good interior reports. I don't think I did that. I think initially I gave a decent report, but then follow-up reports I don't feel like I was very good at. As the fire progressed, once again, I kept reassessing, are we doing the right thing? Are we in the right strategy? Are we risking? What's our risk versus reward there? I felt comfortable that since we didn't have a ton of fire in the house for whatever reason, where we were at, but at the end of the day, is the house really worth saving? We had power issues to the rear, lines down to the rear, and that's why we couldn't extinguish the fire on the outside, which was causing issues with us extinguishing the fire completely on the inside. So those are generally the things that I feel like I could have done better.
All right, thank you.